I'm doing what's called an option select. An option select is where you input a string of inputs into the game, and the game selects whichever one is best for the situation. You know, a video game is just a computer program, and if you feed in a series of steps to a computer program and it's too busy to work on one of the steps, then it might move on to the next step. And that's what an option select is. It just moves on to the next step, just the next one in the chain. So it took me over a dozen tries to get it right. How are players expected to do this on the fly with tournament pressure? Well, that's the question, right? This is always an issue with option selects, because option selects are attacks. Okay, so they have a good payoff. Of course, if you can avoid having to hit confirm with your brain, if you can just avoid that part of the game, great payoff. Great payoff. But it's the tax of always having to have a little bit of brain power and always a little bit of hand power. Well, maybe in this case, a lot of hand power to always input it. And that does take a little bit of brain and some hands. For sure. But if you get it, then it's a high payoff. And ideally, you get to a point where it just becomes muscle memory, like Vizel says. So in SF4, many of us got to a point where you just do a knockdown and you do jump roundhouse, EX Dragon Punch, or whatever your character's thing is. And if the opponent on wake up tries to backdash, or they try to wake up Dragon Punch or whatever, then you'll automatically do your EX Dragon Punch and blow them up. I played Street Fighter 4 for the first time in probably 4 years, just a couple of months ago. And I did it without even thinking about it. I literally did Dan, knockdown, jump roundhouse, EX Dragon Punch. It just came out. Like, it was honestly in my hands somewhere and not even in my brain, and it just came out. So it just became muscle memory. And although that's much easier, this is just a timing thing to learn. It's just a timing thing. Not that difficult. Whoever was in the chat who was asking about whether hit confirming is still useful, the answer is definitely yes. This is not like a panacea that just fits every situation. Option selects are not like that. And this is something also that's very true for some option selects, for many option selects maybe, is that even though, yes, like ideally, like in your brain, you think this should mean like, well, I should always do the thing. It's still often not true. As Baraka, even though I'm doing an option select where I should only get command grab if you're blocking and therefore grabbable, you can still get out of that command grab. And if I'm always doing it, then you should always try to do the duck and get under it and blow me up. Do you understand? Yes, this is exactly the point. That for option selects, what they often actually do is not like decrease the decision space. Some of them are broken, right? I mean, I can't speak categorically here. But for the most part, what option selects do is not actually decrease the decision space. It is instead to just move it. It just goes somewhere else. So I may not have to think about whether you are blocking or getting hit by my tick throw. Maybe that's not something I'm concerned about anymore. Instead, now I'm concerned about whether you are going to understand that I'm option selecting. And if you understand that, then you should duck. But if I know that you expect me to option select, then I'm not going to option select. Right? We've just moved it. We've just moved the decision space a little bit. That's all. I like it. I think it's cool. I've always thought that option selects are cool. One reason is because like I said, I think that they just move, they tend to anyway, just move the decision space a little bit. So rather than like getting rid of some concept or some tool, it just tends to implement new ones, or it tends to like replace some with others. The other reason is that I think it's cool is that I just like making stuff in games. Like I want to have like an impact in it. I want to change it in a way that the developers didn't intend. I you know, I'm happy to play a game that a developer like intends to create. Like a lot of them are really good, but I also just like I just enjoy doing stuff that developer didn't intend because just for that reason, like because it's cool. You know, part of why I like option selects too is this process of finding stuff is very fun. I like it a lot. It's just like an iterative process, and you have to be creative, and you have to understand the game. And there's a lot of stuff that I like about the process to it. Part of the thing about testing for option selects is that you have to, on one hand, you're thinking like smartly, and you're trying to understand the game, and you're trying to think rationally, and then on the other hand, you're trying to think like a dingus. Because what did the other smart, rational people who test games for a living not find out? Well, they probably found out the other like smart, rational stuff that is like plausible to find. What absolute dumbery is there that they didn't find? You get it? So, like sometimes when I'm hanging out with friends testing games, if it like a new game comes out, we'll be looking for combos and whatever, and I'll tell them to do the same thing like 5 times in a row, but in very slightly different ways. And by the like 4th time, they're like, David, like it doesn't work. And I'm like, well, you never know. I mean, it shouldn't work, but yeah, you know, because that's part of looking for something like option selects is thinking dumbly in a way. I mean, really, it's kind of funny. But it's really good. It's not unfair, I agree with you. It's not unfair, and it's not too good. It just makes it so you have to pay attention to other things. So now, maybe you're not as concerned about hit confirming, but instead you'll have to play better footsies, or pressure differently, or whatever. I mean, we'll figure out what the extra layer is, but option selects tend to do that. They tend to give you like an extra layer.